This is not one of those motivational videos that tells you to believe in yourself, and everything will magically fall into place. If you're looking for comfort, leave now. This video is a mirror, and what you see inside it may be the very thing you've been running from your entire life. There's a seductive lie that wraps itself around our lives like a warm blanket. The idea that if you just think the right thoughts, the world will bend to your will. That your reality is yours to create, sculpted by nothing more than belief. We call it manifestation, vision boards, mindset, law of attraction. It's everywhere. You hear it in self-help books, podcasts, TikTok gurus whispering through your headphones at 2 a.m. But no one tells you the darker truth behind this promise. That when you become the creator of your reality, you also become its prisoner. Because when your mind creates reality, it doesn't just build dreams, it builds prisons too. Invisible ones, with no bars, no guards, just thoughts. It starts subtly, a small shift. You begin to believe that your thoughts have power, and they do, but not in the magical sense. In the psychological sense, you don't attract what you want. You become what you fear. Your inner world infects everything. You see shadows where there are none. You create villains in people who once loved you. You rewrite events not as they happened, but as your traumas insist they must have happened. It's not manifestation, it's contamination. Because once your mind becomes the architect of your reality, every blueprint it uses is soaked in the ink of your past pain, your childhood, your shame, your silence. And so you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are, wounded, suspicious, fractured. You call it intuition. You call it self-awareness. But sometimes it's just fear wearing the mask of wisdom. Reality doesn't bend to your will. It bends to your wounds. That's the cost no one tells you about. The heavy price of authorship. Because once you accept that your mind creates reality, then every nightmare becomes your fault. Every toxic relationship a reflection. Every failure a frequency mismatch. And so, the more conscious you become, the more blame you carry. And it gets worse. Because now you're not allowed to just suffer. You have to analyze your suffering. Decode it. Spiritualize it. You can't just be heartbroken. You have to see what lesson the universe is trying to teach you. You can't just feel empty. You have to find which part of your shadow is creating that void. You're not just in pain. You're responsible for it. That's the cruel paradox. The more power you're told you have, the more responsible you become for the parts of your life that are falling apart. And that burden, that's the kind that crushes silently. Because when life gets hard, you don't get to scream anymore. You don't get to fall to your knees and say, "This isn't fair." Because somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice whispers, "You created this." And whether or not that's true doesn't matter. Because you believe it. And belief has always been more dangerous than truth. You start to feel ashamed of your sadness. You question your anxiety. You wonder if your depression is just a side effect of misaligned energy. And instead of reaching out, you retreat. Because how can you ask for help when you're the one who built the storm? That's the hidden cruelty of the idea that the mind creates reality. It isolates you. It tells you that if you're still broken, it's because you haven't mastered your mind yet. That you're not enlightened enough, not healed enough. That if you suffer, it's because you're failing at something spiritual. And so now, healing becomes performance. Enlightenment becomes pressure, and your own thoughts become weapons turned inward. You meditate more, journal more, visualize harder, but the darkness doesn't leave. It just changes shape. It wears the clothes of self-discipline. It hides behind affirmations. It smiles in your mirror, pretending to be your higher self. But deep down, something still aches. And you wonder if maybe the problem isn't that you haven't mastered your mind. Maybe the problem is that your mind was never meant to be a god in the first place. Because a god creates worlds, and you're not built to carry worlds alone. Yet that's what we've asked of people today, to carry entire universes in their heads, to curate their reality, their identity, their energy, their vibration, as if they're the engineer of every atom in their life. It's not just exhausting, it's soul-destroying. Because if everything is a choice, then every scar is a mistake. And every ache is your fault. And every time you cry, you must first apologize to the universe for not being strong enough to alchemize your pain into purpose. And that's where it gets really dangerous. Because now, pain is shameful. Sadness is failure. Loneliness is a lack of alignment. You don't feel human anymore. You feel defective, like some broken program running the wrong code, and so you don't reach out. You go deeper inside, further into the mind, looking for some final switch that will fix everything. But there is no switch, because the mind can't fix what the soul doesn't feel safe enough to share. And if you keep living like your mind is the only thing that matters, eventually you forget how to be real. You become a performance of a person trying to be okay. A smiling illusion with 1,000 affirmations memorized, but no idea how to ask someone to hold your hand. And that's how reality breaks. Not through chaos, but through control. The more you try to control your reality with your mind, the less real it becomes, the more scripted, the more filtered. Until one day you wake up and realize your entire life feels like a podcast clip with background music. And the silence between your thoughts has become terrifying. Because you don't know how to exist without curating your existence. You don't know how to feel something raw without analyzing it. You don't know how to cry without wondering if this is a healing breakthrough or just another subconscious block. You don't know how to be without performing being. And that's when the cost of creating your own reality finally reveals itself. You lose touch with reality altogether. Now, you don't even know what's real anymore. You stare into the mirror, but the reflection doesn't blink back. It mimics, yes, moves when you move, smiles when you smile. But the connection, gone. You've performed being you for so long that you've forgotten what it felt like before the performance began. The mind is a brilliant liar. It doesn't mean to be. But when it's given too much authority, it starts writing scripts for feelings it doesn't fully understand. You're no longer angry. You're processing suppressed masculine energy. You're not just tired. You're burnt out from misaligned energetic output. Everything must be dissected. Everything must be labeled. Everything must be explained. But some things were never meant to be understood. They were only meant to be felt. And now, feeling is dangerous. Because when you feel pain, your mind panics. It wants to turn that pain into something useful, quickly. So it intellectualizes it, spiritualizes it, turns it into content, into the lesson, into the breakthrough. And suddenly, you're standing in the middle of a breakdown, trying to find the right words to describe it, just in case someone else might need to hear it later. But no one needed to hear it, not even you. You just needed to feel it, to scream, to fall apart without commentary, to break, not for healing, not for growth, but because sometimes breaking is the only honest thing left. But when the mind creates reality, honesty becomes a threat. Because reality must be curated. You can't afford honesty if it disrupts the narrative you've built. You must stay positive, stay high vibe, stay in alignment. So, instead of letting the truth come out, you bury it in prettier words. You call your emptiness space. You call your grief release. You call your loneliness freedom. And each time, a little more of your humanity slips away. You become an echo of yourself, pleasant, wise, palatable, the kind of person who says all the right things but forgets what it feels like to mean them. You talk about inner peace while your hands shake behind the scenes. You preach surrender while secretly begging the universe to fix you. And you wonder, when did it get this dark? When did self-awareness become self-surveillance? When did alignment become anxiety? When did creating your own reality become a cage? Because that's what this is now. A psychological prison of your own design, with walls made of affirmations, floors tiled in gratitude, and a ceiling painted with spiritual bypassing. And the worst part, you built it for your own good. You thought you were healing, but healing, real healing, isn't silent. It isn't pretty. It isn't always aligned. Sometimes healing is rage and shaking hands and burning bridges you were never meant to cross. Sometimes healing is grief that doesn't end and forgiveness that never comes. Sometimes healing is admitting that you've spent years building a version of yourself you don't even like. And that version is who the world now expects you to be. So you're trapped, not by others, but by the image of who you think you should be. And you wonder, if my mind created this, then how do I escape it? Here's the truth they won't tell you. You don't escape the mind by mastering it. You escape it by stepping outside of it, into the body, into the breath, into the terrifying, untamed reality that exists before thought. You escape it by touching things that don't make sense, by crying without reason, by laughing in moments that shouldn't be funny, by remembering what it feels like to exist without optimizing that existence. Because reality isn't something to be created. It's something to be lived. You don't need to manifest it. You don't need to hack it. You don't need to write it into your journal 33 times a night. You just need to feel it, without explanation, without judgment, without turning every experience into a symbol or sign or cycle. Because once you stop needing your reality to mean something, it actually starts to mean something real. Not a metaphor, not a mirror, just a moment. And maybe, for the first time, that moment will belong to you. Not the version of you trying to heal. Not the version of you trying to grow. Not the version of you trying to become. But the one who just is. The one you forgot about. The one underneath the performance. The one who never needed to create reality in the first place, because they were already real. Maybe that's the freedom you've been looking for. Not in another mindset, not in another affirmation, not in another theory of how your thoughts shape the universe, but in surrender, in admitting that not everything must be shaped, that not every storm has a message, that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is nothing. Just breathe. Just feel. Just live. Because you were never meant to carry the world alone. You were meant to walk through it, broken and brilliant, unhealed and alive, with your bare feet on the ground and your messy, chaotic, beautiful heart wide open. And if your mind still insists on creating reality, then let it create one where you're finally allowed to be human. Because that's not weakness. That's power. That's real. If this video shattered something inside you, let it. And if something broke open, don't fix it. Feel it. And keep spiraling deeper with Philospiral.